recording. So welcome to the final week. This is week 5 of the Brand Strategy Boot Camp. I'm so excited that you guys are here and that we get to talk about how to actually sell this, because we can learn it all day long, but if we don't know how to sell it, then we're not going to get very far. So I'm really excited to jump into this. I apologize for the amount of text that is in this keynote. Really, I needed to just put it in and then bounce it off you guys to see what takes and what you have questions on. So I apologize ahead of time. There are going to be some stuff that you might want to take screenshots of, because there are some scripts in here too. And I will try, as I refine the course, I'll try to put those things into a document for you, so then it's more like a script that you can read while you're in a sales call versus just going through the keynote. So I'm going to jump in right away and share my screen, and I'm going to do it in a way that I hope will, every time I try to do this, it's like too big. Okay, so I'm going to make it smaller. So just give me a sec while I get this going. All right, so we'll see if this works. Every time that I try to only show a portion of my screen, it cuts it off. It makes me really mad. Okay, so we're going to talk about how to sell strategy. But first, I want to talk about your wins. Has anyone had a really big win that they want to share? That if they've had a session, either with your partner, with a client, does anyone have a win that they want to share? If you do, just hop on. You can unmute yourself and hop on if so. No wins? No wins yet? Not at all? Okay. Well, please share them if you do have them. I really do want to hear them. And I'm sure everyone else wants to hear them too, because it will be encouraging. As you guys start having wins, please do share it with the group, because that is going to encourage everybody to know that it's possible, not just that I've done it, but that other people in the group have too. So we are going to start off talking about positioning yourself as an expert first, because if you're not positioned correctly, then you might not be attracting the right clients, and therefore you're going to have to be trying to flip their mindset or educate them too much. And we don't really want to do that. We want to avoid that as much as possible. So what we're going to do is position ourselves first as an expert. Grant, I think you're not on mute. Are you able to mute? I'm unable to mute you for some reason. I don't know if you can hear me. Hopefully you can. Okay, so we're going to talk about, we'll just dig in right now. So what we're going to go over is, first off, getting over your doubts so that you can build confidence, because if you're able to do this, you're going to be able to speak about this with confidence. You're going to be able to sell it with confidence. So we want to get over those doubts that you may have going into this. And I know a lot of people who have learned brand strategy, but then they're too nervous to actually sell it or say that they're even a brand strategist, just because they're not confident in themselves. So we want to tackle that first. And then how to get known as a brand strategist. So having people actually know you as that, and for you to get hired as that. And then we want to talk about if labels matter, because that has come up a lot in the circles that I'm in. There's people wondering, like, what do I call myself? Well, I'm still a designer, but I want to do strategy. And so they really struggle with what they should call themselves. So I do want to tackle that question too. So I want to go over just this. I've heard this from, it was a coach, or it was someone, one of my friends was listening to a coach. And one of the big things that they were talking about becoming an expert in whatever you're doing is you have to have a mixture of these 3 things. And it's knowledge, experience, and success. So you want to do whatever you can to build your knowledge, which you're doing right now. You're building that knowledge of brand strategy. You're going to be reading books about it. And I just realized another book that I did not add on my list is David C. Baker's The Business of Expertise. So if you haven't heard of that, it's a really good book to build expertise, and I'll add that to the resource list too. But he talks about, how to get known as an expert. He even does talk about selling strategy in there too, and starting off engagements with the strategic engagement first. And then you want to build your experience. So that stuff, like you being here and you actually putting the work into doing these strategic workshops with your client, with your client, with your partner, and then starting to try it with your clients too. So you're going to build a lot of experience doing that. And then lastly, you're going to have successes. So you're going to have success with you doing it with your partner, but you also will start to have success as you implement it with your clients. So you want to start to implement it as soon as possible, and you do not want to stay in that knowledge zone, because that is the place where it's like that never-ending tunnel. You keep going down in the knowledge tunnel because you think that that's going to give you confidence, and it's only one piece of the pie. So I would really encourage you to put this stuff into practice and start getting experience. Is there anything in the chats? Does someone want to be my Nick for the day? Oh, Nick is here. Nick.
Did you want Nick to be your Nick?
I want Nick to be my Nick.
Someone else can be Nick if they want.
No, please do.
Hi, everybody.
Hi. Is anyone saying anything in the chat?
Well, yeah, actually, Martin was wondering if you have linked the reading list as of yet.
No, I have not. I've linked a few of the books here and there, and then I did link some resources to blog posts and then YouTube videos. So they are they're in the unit right now, and then I'm going to add a few of these books too. Sorry, I did tell somebody to be quiet. Yeah.
Edwin said I almost just got fired.
What's going on? Okay. Should we jump back in? Was there any other questions?
No.
Okay.
Wait, hang on.
What?
Amy says Win Without Pitching is coming in the mail today. Great. Awesome. Enjoy that. I
just bought it as a Christmas gift for one of my friends.
How much was it?
I want to $12.
I don't remember,
okay.
But there was a thing a long time ago where it was priced above like $1,000 on Amazon.
That's what's the other book Melinda called?
Pricing Creativity? No.
Yeah, that's Pricing Creativity.
Is it? Yeah, he does sell. That's very expensive.
Tiny. That's like $10. I had seen it earlier on for $30, and I was wondering why. It must have been just a weird little glitch.
I can't remember how much
18.
it was.
At the moment on Amazon, it's $18, the Win Without Pitching.
Super cheap.
Yeah, that's not bad, especially compared to Pricing Creativity, which I'm going to add. I'll add those things on the list. I have it on my notes. So we'll go back to this. So knowledge is only going to get you so far. So please, guys, once you learn something, implement it right away. Right when you learn it, implement it. I cannot stress that enough. I spent too much of my life gathering knowledge and not implementing it. And I got overwhelmed and I got really anxious. And so if you start feeling overwhelmed, it's most likely because you're gathering information that does not meet your current goals. You want to only, and I should have put this in here, but it's that just in case learning versus just in time learning. We want just in time learning. So we want to get good at gathering only the information we need for this very moment versus, oh, someday I'm going to use it. No, don't do that. Just gather what you need for this very moment. That was a real game changer for me. And then ever since I signed up for the coaching that I had mentioned to you guys, that whenever I ask my coach a question and it's not a question that I am actually battling right now, something I'm dealing with and a problem that's current, he always is like, well, we'll wait on that. What's going on right now? And so he helps me solve the problems that are right in front of my face versus me projecting out 3 months ahead and trying to solve a problem that has not even arose. Like it's not even there yet. So whatever you learn right now, put it into practice as much as you possibly can. Get that experience because you're going to have success. You might have a few failures along the way, but you will, I guarantee you, if you put this stuff into practice, you will have success. And start marking those down. Start sharing your wins. We can even start a Friday wins thread. I think that would be really good to, and if we're going to be moving over to Slack too, we can start a wins channel in there. I want you guys to be thinking and noticing your successes because it will encourage you guys to keep going and to actually put this stuff into practice because it gets hard and it gets scary to put this into practice. But if you do that and you keep making note of your success, you'll get farther. So some things that we're going to dive into, getting known as a strategist, is sharing your expertise. So you only can do that by experience and expertise that come from the same word. So you need experience to talk about your expertise. You can't just regurgitate. You can regurgitate the knowledge, but it's going to be shallow. So if you learn something and you turn around and teach it, that's fine. But it has more substance when you can actually share from your experiences what happened. Whether that you might have failures that have happened with businesses, and that's fine. Share those because everyone can learn from it. So you need experience to share your expertise. You first will, and we have talked about this in the Q&As, but giving value first to your industry, that's one way you could go about it. The other way is giving value to the industries that you want to work in. And I do have a video. I do not know if I've posted it yet. I've mentioned it a few times, but Bob Bonial had talked to my Inner Circle mastermind group about how his company of, I don't know how many years they've been in business, but I want to say minimum 20, 25 years, and how he just tracked how his company got known. And they're doing massive things. I mean, they're working for major cruise lines, and they do a lot of the experiential, like theatrical sets for places like cruise lines and award shows, and the stuff where it's a mix between video and built sets. And so he talked about his whole experience and how he got known, and we'll be basing this off of what he said. And so I do have that video I'll share with you guys. The other thing is, which this is what you're doing while you're in this course, is you're getting strategy done on yourself in your own business, and you're going to course correct it as needed. Like the strategy that I had done for me when I first learned this, we were all just learning and we were figuring it out. I needed to know myself better too. And so it was a good starting point for me when I had that done. And this is a good starting point for you guys who are doing it with your partner. But it doesn't have to stop there. You can course correct it. You can redo it. You can rebrand. But you don't have to rebrand. You can keep what you have and just tweak it along the way. So just know that whatever comes out of this whole thing that you have with your partner, that it's a really, really good starting point. And so you need to know that, because you need to know who your ideal client is. You want to know who you're aiming at, and you want to know who is going to be a good qualified client as opposed to not. So sharing your expertise, and I'm just talking in more vague generalities here, and we'll get down to like actual tactics later, but sharing your expertise can be as little as talking about what you do. So when someone asks you when you're out at a family party or when you're talking to friends, talk about what you do. So don't just, if you were a designer, don't just talk about design anymore. Say, I've learned something new, and this is what I've learned, and this is how it's helping businesses. And if you're really excited about what you're learning, share it, talk about it with people. They might have something like, oh, I just hired a strategist the other day, and this is what we did. It'll open up so many conversations. So I would encourage you to talk to everyone you know about this. Also, concentrate on the problem that it solves versus just the solution. So instead of just talking about like, yeah, we go over the ideal client, we go over the brand attributes, don't focus so much on that. Focus more on, this is what it's helped these businesses do. This is what it helped my partner when I just tested it out the other day and they had this aha moment. And talk about those things that would meet the person, whoever you're talking to, like meet them and they could understand it. Oh, I get that. That sounds so exciting. You want to have those types of conversations, and then talk about the results. So as you get results, share those results, share them with your colleagues, share them with us, share them with anyone that you're talking to, because the more that you share it, you're going to also buy into the fact that this is actually really valuable. We know it's valuable, but I think as strategists too, I hear a lot of people that they don't know the value that it can bring to businesses. And the more that we focus on what those results are that we create for people and the value we bring, we'll believe it. And if we don't believe something, why do we expect anyone else to? If we are not even convinced that it's going to help someone's business, why would anyone believe us? Because they're going to hear it in our voice. They're going to hear that we're not that convinced and we're trying to sell them on something. So we first have to believe whatever it is that we're doing. And in this case, it's strategy. So getting known in your industry, and this is the same, actually, this is what you're going to do if you were to get known in another industry. You're going to get on podcasts. You're going to become a thought leader. You're going to write thought pieces. You're going to guest blog. You're going to give value to whatever things that people in your industry look at, or in our industry, trade publications you can write for, speaking engagements, events. The thing is, you want to get known as an authority. And this is one way of doing it. You don't have to start here. However, it's the easiest way. This is easy because if you look around in this room right now, we all have connections. I have connections. You know people in this industry already. So it is much easier to become an authority because of that. And you know what trade publications there are, you know what guest blogs or that you could potentially get on. So you already know the industry really well. It will take little research for you to know where you should go and who you should start talking to. So I would start there just because it's an easier entry point. But if you're brave and you don't want to, you could just go head first into diving into other industries that you want to work in. And we had talked about this a little bit on other Q&As, but getting on their podcast. So I was on, was it the $1 Million Mortgage Broker or something? I don't even remember what the name of it was. They approached me to be on it, but they were a mortgage lending company that gives content to mortgage brokers so that the mortgage brokers would actually use this lending company in their business, and so that they could use them instead of going to big banks. Really smart. Well, they had me on there to help teach the marketing consultants how to brand themselves to land these massive mega loans. And because if they land the massive mega loans, then, or the jumbo loans, they would then go to this lending company to use for the jumbo loan. So it's just brilliant in how they're going about their marketing strategy. But they had me on. So that is in an industry that I would totally love to work in. So what industries, like if you wanted to do real estate, if you wanted to work with real estate clients, how could you bring value in what you do to that industry? You can actually reach out and contact these people who run podcasts and request to be on their show and say, this is how I believe I could give value to your audience. I love what you're doing. And however, you can even find scripts online for this. And if I find them too, I think I have some somewhere. You could do that. The other thing is, if you know even one person that is connected to these people, just get your foot into the door and ask them to give you an introduction. That's another way you could do. I think I have it in here. I do in a slide, but the other thing is use the connections you already have to get yourself a foot in the door in one of these places. And you want to start doing these things. So it might feel really uncomfortable for you if you don't public speak yet, or you're not used to this. Maybe you haven't yet developed your point of view. That's okay. If you just start writing thought pieces, that could even be like you have a strategy session and then use the next day to debrief yourself on what happened. Tell the story of what happened in the strategy session. What insights came out of it? And the more you do that and reflect, and the more you write and are able to develop your opinions and how you tell a story, the more you'll have to say on things like podcasts and guest blogs and speaking engagements, because you're going to start extracting the value out of your experience. So remember, we talked about you need that experience. Well, then you need to translate that experience into something coherent that you can communicate the value of it to other people. So that's a really good way of doing it, is just to retell stories. If something really cool happened, like I want to retell the story of what happened with Courtney in these sessions. I want to retell, maybe even it's just a piece of, she thought her original client was one person and really it's someone else. So that could be a story that I tell. So I would encourage you guys to debrief yourself like after something happens, especially if there's something really good and juicy that comes out of it. And ask yourself, like, how would I retell this story if someone were to ask me? And write it out and start practicing how you would do that. And then you'll start feeling really confident to end up going on podcasts. The other thing is guest blogging as well. I've shared, and I can share, I need to find that. When I reached out to that guest blogger, and I said, hey, I'd love to give value to your community or see how we could help each other, because my clients could really use what you're doing and I would love to help them out too. And that's another way to get into partnerships with people who are in other industries that you want to work for. Find the person that is serving the same audience that you want to work for in a different way. So just like this lender, this mortgage lender, he's serving mortgage brokers. And so say mortgage brokers were my ideal client, or at least one of them I wanted to go for. I'd say, hey, those are my types of clients. I would love to start working more with them and give them value and share how you can help this person give more value to their audience. That would really help me. If someone came to me and said, hey, I really want to give more value to your audience. I have this thing about strategy that could make it more simple for them to implement or whatever. I would hear them out, because my goal is to give value to my audience. And if someone comes along and says, I want to help you give value to your audience as well, I'll hear them out and see. So that's a way that you can start getting known. And the more that you do, you will become the go-to. I mean, you can claim that spot. If there's a specific industry that you want to work in, and you just start going and dominating on all of those podcasts, and they might not yet have someone talking about branding, then you can own that space. And then you can replicate that in another industry and just go on all of their podcasts, because there's so many niche things out there now that there is room for everybody to get known in different pockets and different spaces. The other thing I wanted to say too is create systems. So as you, I got to make a note to give you guys this. Oh, I think actually Grant already posted this podcast, the Business of Authority podcast, the one on marketing. I listened to it. It's really good, with Jonathan Stark, and I forgot the co-host's name. But they talked about building your systems for your marketing. So posting content. So as you're doing this stuff, as you're posting podcasts, as you're posting thought pieces or blogs or whatnot, you want to start creating a system and a habit of posting. So not just doing them all in one day or 1 week, but you want to get in the rhythm of coming up with ideas and then writing them. And I used to be in the rhythm of writing once a week. I'm trying to get back into that. But I also realized that a lot of my ideas and thoughts come after things like this, like a talk with you guys or a meeting with a client. And I'm building in a time right after my meetings and my podcasts to write out my thoughts and my notes. Maybe not full on writing a blog post, but getting my thoughts out. So I'm building that into my schedule and stacking my habits so that I have a podcast, and then right after I retell something because something inevitably will come up in conversation that makes me think about all this stuff. And so that's something I'm going to be doing. But if you're able to create some type of way to capture your thoughts in a way that it happens organically, so you're not forcing yourself just to come up with ideas to post about, because it'll be like really boring too. Like, you want these things to come out of stories, and you want them to come out of experiences. So figure out a way to capture those ideas while they're happening or right after they're happening. And then, like I had mentioned, if you want to get on podcasts, you can definitely ask for introduction to the podcast hosts. So this is something that Tom Ross and I have done. This is something that the CEO of the Logo Package, he's been on some podcasts, and we've connected each other with our network. So we just listed out, hey, these are all the people I know that I could connect you with. He did the same, and we're like, tell me who you want introductions to. So get someone, start meeting people, become friends with people, because as you do that, you can expand your network and the web of people that you know. So it's not uncommon for that to happen. And Tom, like I look at Tom's emails back to these people that I introduced him to, and he literally just asks to be on the podcast and say, I know that I could give a lot of value to your community. Here's how. Maybe just a couple bullet points, keep it short. And if it makes sense, usually everyone says yes. So it really taught me to ask for what you want. Don't just wait for people to discover you or to ask you on the podcast, that you can actually go out and ask for what you want, because it's not just what you want. You know that it's going to give value to that audience. And once you know that, you're not going to feel awkward saying that and asking for that, because you're like, I know I'm going to give value. So just go out there and ask for it. And then I would encourage all of you, if you do want to get known, Nick, I'll bring you on in 1 second. If you want to get known, write. Just write. You don't have to post anything just yet. Just learn how to communicate your thoughts through writing, because through writing, you will gain clarity over your thoughts and how to communicate. So I would encourage you guys, if you have not yet gotten into the rhythm of some kind of writing, I would encourage you to do that, because it will help you clarify and communicate not only with your clients, but then through your marketing too. Nick, do you want to hop on?
The person who I have been calling Zani, but I think maybe you've been calling her Annie, so I assume her name is Annie, is asking, hi Annie, if that's your name. What is it? She's asking, what does Tom do? I missed that.
Oh, so Tom Ross is, if you look up Tom Ross Media on Instagram, talks a lot about entrepreneurship, but he is the CEO of Design Cuts. So he, his company does all of those design mock-ups, very similar to Creative Market, but it's design mock-ups and other stock things that you can buy.
Are Design Cuts the people who the Future have this affiliate deal with at the moment as well?
Yeah. The Future's partnered with them, so they do fonts and mock-ups partnership with them. I've partnered with them too. So I think I shared the link in there too, but we've partnered together. I picked my 5 top favorite mock-ups, and then they gave my audience 50% off. So I do have that connection too. So if you guys haven't seen that yet, I might have posted it, but I'm not sure. I can do that.
I downloaded that massive bundle, the biggest bundle of all time. And like, oh my God, I'm
hard to get through.
Yeah, I'm still only like maybe 15 to 20% through months later.
Same.
It's so hard to go back.
I wish there were thumbnails that you could.
Yeah.
Like a catalog system or something, because it's difficult. Yeah, agreed. But I think too, I like look back at my career and how, because Tom told me, he's like, you're the one of the people that I would say is the go-to for brand strategy in our industry. Like when he thinks of me, he thinks of brand strategy. And I'm like, wow, that's interesting that someone of his status, because he knows a lot of people, he's been doing this a long time. He has tons of podcasts, but he would see me as that. And I look back, and most of my experience has been me getting known in my industry. And I could have put more energy in getting known in other industries, but because I'm teaching, I stuck with our industry. But if you look back at what I've done too, to get known in that space, and you can do the same thing. I would suggest for you guys though, if you're looking to get more client work than you are doing what I do, that you should start looking at how can you dominate and give value to other industries in their niche communities. And you can just do that. You don't have to stick with one niche community. You can do that for tons. Just start with one. I would say just start with one, because just like our community, it's very small. Like if you know one podcast host in this industry, you can get connected with probably 15 others. And that is the same thing that will happen if you start getting known in the other niche industries. It's the same idea. Everybody knows each other. And so if you're able to give value in one place, you can ask for introductions to others and the doors will open for you. So I highly, highly suggest you start doing that. And you don't have to have a massive social following. That is something that, people always say, like, you have to get a ton of followers, and you don't have to. I would have social platforms, yes, but if I were to choose where to put my time, it would be into creating my network, getting on podcasts, giving tons of value to someone's audience, get in front of people's audiences. Then second would be my social platforms. So that's how I go about it, because you can get in front of so many more people at one time by being on someone else's platform than you can by collecting them one by one on your own platform. So think of your social platform as like the second step, whereas the first one is get in front of someone else's audience. Second step is funnel them either to your social media or ideally, it would be to your website and to your email list, ideally, and give them value there. So that's how I would think of the funnel. Nick, yes.
So Annalie has a very pertinent question, which boils down to, is geography relevant? So I'll ask it verbatim. Easy to get known even in the US? I live in a country that is like smaller than Chicago. So is geography important is the question there? No.
If you're going about it this way, you can choose like Courtney. Courtney's going to be getting known in her area. Doesn't mean she has to. Annalie, if you want to get known in the US, then what I would do is look for a niche community that you want to give value to, and then find out where all of the people who already are gathering that audience, who are they, and start researching who are they on podcasts, what blogs are they writing, and I would list out 100 people. I would aim to list 100 people that fit within that, and then start giving value to them. And they weren't going to care where you live. Like, I'm on Tom Ross's podcast, the Honest Designers podcast. He's in the UK, and Dustin Lee is out here in the US. Like, everyone's all over the world. And I think of niche communities as their own, it's like their own geography, right? You want to get into that. And so I think physical space for you, it doesn't really matter. For Courtney, it does, because her ideal client is geography bound in that respect. So yeah, good question though. So we're touching on, like, with positioning, we're touching on a lot of marketing right now. And this is a big deal, because if you get this right, you will get warm leads. You will get leads who will not push back that much on what your prices are. They will value you as an expert because they've heard what you had to say, and they already come in with a bunch of trust. Because cold leads that don't really know you, that found you on Google, that can't really say that they're going to come in totally knowing what's going on, and you're going to have to educate them, and you're going to have to flip their mindset. And that is so much harder. Where what if you could just, the education part, think of that as what you're going to be doing on podcasts. Think of that as what the value you're going to be giving on blog posts and whatever content you create. You're educating people there. And you don't want to have to educate people once they get on a sales call, because they're going to waste your time. And you're going to be having all of these sales calls, and you're going to have low closing rates, and you're going to be really, really frustrated. And then you're going to think, oh, should I lower my price because no one can afford me? And it's like, no, you just attracted the wrong people. So if you're having that issue, it's because you're attracting those clients. Do you have something to add, Nick?
Oh, no, I'm just nodding along at I need to lower my prices. I'm being unreasonable. We can't afford that in Dublin, Ireland, Cyprus, Sweden, Latvia, whatever.
Yeah.
We can't afford to charge those prices here. Christo, Melinda, they're all talking shit, because where I am, we can't afford those prices. The market can't handle it. Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's true. And so I would learn how to give value to the global niche communities, because it's the same. It's the same idea. You know, where do they all collect? And they're going to all collect somewhere in, like, those niche communities and learning from there. So I feel like there's not really an excuse for not learning how to give value. It might be a little harder if you don't know the culture, but you could learn it. I mean, it's the same idea of people learning different languages. It's hard, but doesn't mean you aren't able to do it. Some additional notes really quick. Focusing on the results. So you can also show case studies, make sure to get testimonials. The other thing is, changing your sales conversation is going to position you as an expert as well. So even if you get a cold lead in, you can still position yourself as an expert there. And then I would encourage you, just like I had said previously, write about your stories, write about aha moments, write about insights that happen from your workshops or conversations, or what you learn here, anything like that you can talk about. And then, like what we were talking about with Nick, with lowering your price, say no to projects that are a wrong fit. This is also marketing. When you talk to someone and you say, I'm so sorry, that's not actually what I do. I do this, and you explain what it is. And that, you telling that one person, yes, it's only one person, but you telling them is positioning you in their minds where you should be. Because if you alter who you are, that means you are changing your positioning, and you're no longer the brand strategist expert that you want to be. And you're like, fine, I'll just lower my price and I'll include all this design that I don't want to do. Right when you do that, you've moved yourself from where you were here, and you're like, fine, I'll be this over here just because client won't change. Or no, you say no to that client. And I get that sometimes we have to keep the lights on, and you might have to take some things, and that's a different situation. If you're able to, and I would encourage you, even when you're uncomfortable doing it, start saying no to ones that you know are a good fit, but maybe are pulling you to change who you are, your positioning. I would really encourage you not to do that, because they might say, and I've had this happen to me, people say, oh, that's really good to know that you do that, because I'll come back to you for what you actually do. I had an instance where I was pretty close to landing strategy with Casamigos Tequila. And I was in talks with the creative director. Sadly, he moved on to a different company. But when I was talking to him, he got in contact with me because a friend said I was a freelancer. He was looking for a freelancer. Once I got on the phone with him, I said, no, that's actually not what I do, but let me talk to you about your problem and hear what's going on. What happened was he was dealing with 10 teams across the world. He was the leader of it all. He couldn't keep everything straight. He was the point person, so he had to keep telling all the teams what to do. Everything was a mess. Nothing was coherent. Nothing was consistent. And I said, well, what I'd actually do would help you be consistent in your communications, and it would relieve you of a lot of time on what you're doing. And I said, do you have a strategy at all? And he's like, yeah, it's in my head. And I said, perfect. What we would do together would be getting that strategy out of your head, get it onto paper, and then I could come in and train your teams if you would want. It was going to go really well, but he ended up leaving. But if I would have just said, oh, yeah, I can freelance for you because that's what you're looking for, I immediately assumed the position of order taker. So if you watch that conversation flipped from him looking for probably a $50 an hour freelancer to potentially a very, very, very large engagement of thousands of dollars. So think of that too. And he's going to remember that going to his next company, that he's going to remember that those were the things that I could have helped him with. But if I would have changed, then he would have just thought of me of like just any other freelancer. So I really encourage you to start saying no to things that are not a good fit. I want to talk about labels really quick because a lot of people say like, I don't know if I should call myself a brand strategist, or I'm still a designer, or what about business developer? There's so many different things that you can call yourself. Labels don't necessarily matter as much as you think. If you want to do brand strategy, call yourself a brand strategist and then learn how to live in that and actually act upon it. Getting stuck on this idea, if you're going round and round wondering if you should call yourself this is going to lead you to perfectionism and stalling. Pick something and move forward. It's the same with your business name. If you're stuck on this for too long, pick something, doesn't matter, and go forward with it. Nick, do you have a comment with us?
One quick question. So obviously brand strategist is something that we're all looking at, and I've been looking at it for a while. And as soon as I think of my potential customers, those prospects, obviously to them, brand strategy is pure jargon. Mm-hmm. It is neither clear nor helpful. It is ambiguous and exclusive, mm-hmm. off-putting. Mm-hmm. So how might we, in just a brief answer anyway, how might we solve that little issue in terms of messaging? Do we just say, here's your problem, here's the solution, in kinder words, or what?
Yeah, what I would do is I would focus on what can you help them with? So what is it so if someone said, I'm a social media strategist, I'm like, I don't freaking care. What can you help me with? If they're like, oh, well, I can actually help you increase the number of followers that you have and convert into email subscribers. Cool, you're hired. I don't really care. Like if I'm thinking of it as the client, I care more about what can you help me with in my business versus what do you call yourself. So social media strategist, I'm like, fine, whatever. You can call yourself whatever you want. What I'm more interested in is what does that mean for me? And so I would say pick your title, as in brand strategist, cool, but focus more on, if you're going to put any energy anywhere, focus it on what are you helping them do? And that will get you way farther. Because you then you never have to. Okay.
Yeah, then you never have to say I am. You just say I do.
Yeah. And if you have to list it somewhere on like LinkedIn or something, it's fine to say brand strategist. I don't think that's a big deal at all. But I would, if you have to tell someone like, yeah, I'm a brand strategist, I help blah, 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 and get your elevator pitch. I don't have like an elevator pitch, a solid one. I typically use the line of, I help businesses build their personality so they can connect with and attract their ideal clients or customers or whatever the person that I'm talking to uses. That usually connected with people. And I was like, oh, that's intriguing. I want to hear more. But if you can, if you concentrate on, this is what I do. This is what I do for you. This is what I could do for you. This is the results that you could get. Focus on that more so than the label. Because like I said down here, everyone has their own definition. So even graphic designer, some clients will think of graphic designer as someone they can order around and push around and just say, you need to do this. And they don't think of them as creative. They just think of them as, you're really good at Photoshop. So everyone has a different definitions of titles and labels. So you want to make sure you define whatever it means for you and communicate that. But again, talking more about the problems versus the services that you use to solve said problems. So talk more about the results, talk about the problems, than you do about yourself and what you do. Because really, as a client, I don't care how you do it. I just want to know that you're going to get me where I'm trying to go. Yeah, Nick.
There are 2 questions in the chat. Do Annie and Rachel want to come on and chat? Maybe Annie first. I think you asked first.
Okay. Sorry. Hold on. What was my question? My question was, when you were speaking about you would kind of prioritize getting on podcasts and things like that versus your social media presence. Would you prioritize that if your goal is client attraction or if you're just in an audience thought leadership building phase?
I would do it because our clients listening to these podcasts that you're maybe thinking of being on.
Sure.
Then yes. So it's just going to look a little different. So you might be talking about something on the podcast, like the one that I was on with the mortgage brokers, like how to attract clients, how to attract people who need jumbo loans, how to attract that type of clientele. I might end up having a landing page specifically for that podcast. And I would actually encourage you to do this. Be on a podcast, create a landing page just for those listeners. Say, thank you for listening to that podcast. Here's a free whatever it is to get on the email list. Just because it's an audience and clients are pretty much the same. It's a lead. A lead is a lead. You're just selling them something different than say something I would sell. So you're selling them something a little different. Consider anyone who gets on your email list as a lead in your case, not necessarily just an audience member.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Melinda, do you create landing pages like that through MailChimp or another email provider?
You could. I do it because I use Squarespace for my website. I create them on my Squarespace site. But yeah, definitely you could use it. If you use ConvertKit, if you use MailChimp, you can create landing pages through there and do that.
ConvertKit, that's the one.
Also, I am a big fan of ConvertKit over MailChimp. I'm just putting that in there. ConvertKit's awesome. You can create landing pages through that. So I would encourage you, anytime that you do these things, funnel people to, like, they read whatever you wrote or they listen to the podcast, funnel them to that specific link for that podcast, for that website, so you can track where these leads are coming from. Because if some podcast gave you 200 leads, you're going to want to be back on that podcast or figure out how you can give more value to the audience. So you want to know where these people are coming from. Nick, yeah.
So then, Rachel, do you want to pop on, or will I paraphrase you? What do you prefer?
Sure. Yeah. So I heard you say, Melinda, that it's so much harder to sell clients when they don't know who you are and exactly what you do. But in my experience, it's been really hard to source those clients who, are the business owners, are super busy, don't have a lot of time. Like the smaller business owners who might be listening to these podcasts, I feel like they would be great potential clients. But if we're thinking about clients who are going to pay $10,000, $20,000, $30,000, really big scope, I don't know that in my experience, they don't exist in the same space. And those are the clients that I find are really tricky to get, like they don't really get the big picture. Mm-hmm. And so when I've said I'm a designer, or when I've worked with a PR company, people come in because they say, oh, I need PR, I need design. And then we say, well, actually you need strategy. actually you need a brand deck, or your identity needs to be cleaned up, and here's what we offer, and then they get it. But the flip side of that is then they don't often value the strategy aspect. It's just kind of like a means to an end. Mm-hmm. So trying to like find that space where, I guess that's my question. Like if I just say, I'm a brand strategist, this is specifically what I do, is it just going to go over a lot of people's heads because they say, oh, I don't need that, I need PR?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And that's going to be, you have to get more creative. It's going to get more difficult. Like you said, it's harder to find those, the people that are going to pay more money because they hang out in different spaces than the people who pay less money. So yes, they're going to be listening to different things. They're going to be reading different things. And so the people who are, so you want people who come in knowing like, I need this, not, oh, I need PR. I need something else. I need a social media person. I need marketing. I've had people say, I need Facebook ads. I'm like, you don't even have a brand yet. And they want Facebook ads. So I think though, are you getting strategy done on you with a partner?
No.
Okay. You might want to think about that because you have to figure out where your ideal client lives, as in lives online too. And where are they getting their information? Maybe they're reading the Harvard Business Review and they're not listening to all these little like smaller podcasts. Maybe they're listening to that. Maybe they're listening to NPR. Maybe they are going to different events. Like whose email list would your ideal client be on? It's going to be different than everybody else's. And they're there. They're not just doing only work. Like they're getting information somewhere. They're reading something. It's just that we have to be a little more creative in finding them where they are. The other thing I would encourage you to do, if they are coming from like PR agencies or whatnot, connect with those PR agencies. I've done that, and they said a lot of times the PR agency said, you know what, I would love to have this done before the client comes to me. So I say, great, is there a way we can work this out where if a client comes to you and you're unable to work with them because they don't have a strategy, that you send them to me and I send them back to you and we're done? So figure out, where are these people? Who are they talking to, and how can you find them? So you just have to get creative where you find them. It's hard though. It's not an easy thing, but they're there.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And then one other thing, Rachel, I would say, yes, saying that you're a brand strategist is going to go over a lot of people's head. And I would go back to what I said before of what can you help them do? So what is the very specific problem that you can help them do? So in the case of the mortgage broker, I would specifically help them attract people who need jumbo loans and that type of clientele on a consistent basis. So I would actually speak that language very specifically to them if I had a landing page that I was funneling them to. So you want to get to know them so well that you can speak their language.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And then this goes back to the idea of meeting your client where they are at, not where you are at. So we so badly want to be understood. We so badly want people to understand like what brand strategy is and what we do because we're so excited about it. Try to see it from their perspective. What do they want to hear? They want to hear, how the heck is this going to help my business? Where is this going to get me in my business? Is this going to help solve my very, very specific problem? That's why I say really get to know this audience, because like I had heard, I think it was on the Business of Authority podcast, they said, like a doctor, they talk about their customers as patients. They're patients. So you don't want to say customers to a bunch of doctors when they talk about them as patients. Other people talk about their customers as clients. Like you want to use the terms they use so that they can feel connected to you. So that's why I say get on these niche things, really understand their industry, because if you don't, you could be talking in generalities and they are not going to be able to connect. But like me, if I'm saying, hey, I'm going to help you attract that client that needs a jumbo loan, and I'm going to help you not only attract that one client, I'm going to help you attract them on a consistent basis and figure out how to do that on a consistent basis. So you don't have to take, just like us, the lower paying jobs to our clients to make ends meet. Nick, did you want to add something?
You're so observant. How many landing pages have you got right now?
I haven't done them for every single podcast, and I probably should. So I probably have between 5 and 7 right now.
Fuck. Okay. And
yeah.
and like we could go to any of those by typing in / whatever the address is. It's just that the address in particular is left on the podcast chat or whatever. Is that right?
Yeah. So I would give them, especially for virtual summits, it's a really big deal. You want to, if you ever asked on a virtual summit where they have a bunch of speakers in like a weekend, you want to have that because they usually give you a lot of leads from that. And it would just be my address / whatever I name it. And then they would take that link and put it on their page to funnel people to. Yeah, exactly. And it usually has their name in it, like the podcast name, which is really helpful. We'll go into the sales conversation. So that was just the marketing part. We'll get into sales right now. Nick, your audio's in and out a little bit. You have something else?
Oh.
Yeah, it was like
my audio's syncing out. Shit. Oh man.
Most of it's me picking that up.
How is it now?
Sounds good now. I don't know if it was
well, it shouldn't be. I mean, is that worse or better?
Nope, better.
Okay. So Martin is asking, can we actually see an example of one of those landing pages or all of them? He's not sure what we're talking about.
Yes. Let me stop share really quick so I can open one up. Talk amongst yourselves as I find
it. What's the crack, everybody? How's everyone doing? Is anyone on the
Nick, I
far end of the roadmap now? Pardon, Martin?
I want to know why you were 5 minutes late. We were all so worried. I mean, this is not happening without Nick.
Fuck off. I'm always late, dude.
As well.
So
pardon?
I actually texted you on Facebook as well. Mate, where are you?
Oh, did you? I'm pretty much always like 5 to 10 minutes late for these things because I like go in at I sit down with 2 minutes to go, and then I open up my own meeting and check my lighting and like get the camera aligned, and then I go make a cup of tea and stuff.
Nick is fashionably late. That's what it is.
That's good. Well, at least he's here. I'm gonna pop on really quick and share. Okay, hold on. I don't want this anymore. How do I get rid of that? Really? Sorry, I'm trying to stop. It's only showing a piece of my screen. Oh, there we go. Okay. So here's one. I actually didn't have as many as I thought. Here's one from a virtual summit. Now, Rachel, if you're trying to get higher end clients, this is more of like a cheaper end thing where it's like, grab your bonus. Like you might want to think about, it might be different. I'll show you another landing page though, where I actually offer a consulting package and it's specific to this community, the specific community, and they get a deal. And so that's why it's there. So you could do something where it's like that, but there was, let me find out. There was one where it was actually, let me stop sharing and find it really quick, and then where I had the consultation that they could purchase. But that was an example of it for Martin. Oh man, where is it? If I do find it, I will put it in the group. Bummer. But yeah, I've partnered with other people like the Logo Geek. All right, I'll have to find it and send it to you guys. But it was the consultation and it was specific to that community. I wish I could find it because that was another example. But so it's just that it's a page that talks specific to whatever community that you're serving. And so it talks in their language, it talks about what you're going to give them. So it could be anything from a paid service that you're offering to something free to jump on your email list to a free call with you. I've done that too, where it's just a landing page and said, if you want to continue this conversation, and thanks for listening to the podcast. If you like to continue this conversation, jump on a free 30-minute call with me. That's another thing that you can do too. So hope that helped you. Okay, so we'll get back to this. Okay, so yeah, the sales conversation. We'll jump into this. Going back to this whole idea, always, always, always focus on the client's goal. It's about the client. not about us trying to prove, sell, or do anything like that. You're going to ask questions to gain clarity so that you completely understand where the client's coming from and what they need. Don't go in assuming anything. That is the hardest thing to do, because we're going to have things that we assume, even just about how big their company is or how much they can afford, or try to come in with as little to no assumptions as possible. Qualifying clients, you want this in the back of your head, just as you're in the conversation with people, is do they meet your minimum level of engagement? If you guys could put in the chat, do you know what your minimum level of engagement is? Do you even know what that is? If you don't, let me know. I'll just give you a rundown really quick. Your minimum level of engagement, that's talked about by Blair Enns a lot, of how much would one client bring to you in the course of a year. So like, what's the value of one client to you in a year? Typically, it's a good idea, especially as you're moving up in your pricing, to have the number that you want to aim at. Let's just say it's 100,000, and then divide it by 10. I believe it's 10. And that's going to give you the minimum level of engagement that each new client that comes in needs to meet, so that you can meet your minimum level in the year if you have 10 clients. So 10 clients at 10,000, you'll earn 100,000. So that's over the course of a year. That means that your strategic engagement could be 10,000. It could mean that it is 5,000, but you need to see that clients are potentially going to pay another $5,000 in the course of working with you. So that's a real quick rundown of minimum level of engagement. So when I say that, or if I say MLE, that's what I'm talking about. And then just in the back of your head, as you're talking to these clients, are they actually your ideal client? Do you like them? Like, do you see them as someone, maybe they're not the absolute ideal, but do they at least fit generally with a type of person that you want to work with? Do they see you as an order taker? Do you have that weird gut feeling when you're talking to them that you're an order taker and they see you as that? That's a red flag. And then how warm of a lead are they? Because yes, you can flip cold leads, but if you're able to get in, the warmer the lead you're able to get in, the easier it's going to be to close. So that means that hopefully when you have a warm lead, that means your marketing did a really good job of warming them up, whether that is through the podcast you do, whether that is through your social media content, your email marketing that you've done, or just emailing single emails, individual emails to these people. Whatever it is, you've warmed them up really well. And it could even be in conversations you've had with them that you want them to be warm. It'll be a lot easier. Is this project and client, is it high risk and high value? Nick, did you want to add something to what I said?
Not to add, no, Ani had a question, and I'm not sure what it is. If you want to hop on, Ani.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
I wanted to hear if you could give an example really quick of if somebody did a 5,000 brand strategy with you, like what could make up an additional 5,000 that they would come back for it within that year. If that makes sense.
Yeah, typically it would be someone who might need brand identity. That would be personally, my first go-to is when I offered brand identity. That would be the thing that I would say, okay, well, you're most likely going to need, we're not going to like say it 100%. We're most likely going to need brand identity. Then I would assume that would be it. If you offer more services, it could be social media, it could be website, any deliverables would make up the rest. But because I don't offer deliverables anymore, I consider my MLE 10.
Yes. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. So I have I share the belief with Jonathan Stark of getting high risk, high value projects. So the ones that are low risk, low value, like, I guess we could do this. Oh, we just need some social media graphics. Or if things aren't that big of a deal, it's not that high of a value to them. And so we try to ask questions to uncover whether or not this is a high risk, high value project. And then, like I said before, do you like the client? Do you like the budget? And do you like the project? And then this is a thing I just wanted to make you guys aware of. It's really good to walk into any meeting knowing you can walk away. Believe that you can walk away from this because it wasn't yours in the first place to lose. Like, you didn't land it yet. So if you lose it, it wasn't yours anyway. So just go in. It's just like job interviews. If you ever go to a job interview, just go in believing that you could walk away, that you do not need this. Even if you really do need it, do whatever you can to convince yourself you can walk away from this. That has really, really helped, because you will come in, what do they say? That desperation is a really smelly cologne. We do not want to be smelling.
I was just going to say it stinks.
It stinks. I think Chris Do just put out that thing about insecurity too, about the cologne. It's called Insecurity. It's true. You can smell it on people. So meditate if you have to, whatever you have to do. Go call a friend to get pumped up beforehand, anything, but believe that you can walk away from this and that there's other things out there for you. And
even Blair Enns actually suggests that if you can step back 3 times during a sales call, you've got them. Right?
Yeah,
like
retreating.
Yes, retreating. So if you can have the mindset of, I don't need it, and literally put down, earlier before, and in your work documents, we spoke about objections and responses. And if you can stick that objection in there yourself and say, why are you coming to me? This doesn't make sense, or whatever. Surely you could go elsewhere. Surely you could go to 99 Designs and get your logo done for 100 quid. Why not do that?
Exactly.
And step back and have them follow.
Yeah, that's a very good a note. I also want to add, because I hear a lot of people teaching on how to respond to objections. And I'm not against that. I think that's really good. We need to know those things. However, I like to avoid objections at all costs. So what I do is I actually try to answer those objections in my marketing and my messaging ahead of time. If you're able to say what it is that is on the client's mind, even before getting into the sales conversation, they're going to have little objections. And I find the client that has too many objections in the sales meeting, I need to walk away, because I'm going to spend all my time trying to convince them out of this or to flip their mindset, because an objection is a mindset hurdle. And you can do all these things to get them out of those mindset hurdles, but I've had that happen before, where someone in sales got me out of those objections and I still was feeling icky at the end. And so I'm not saying always that you're going to have objections, but just to be aware that if you have a lot, you might want to think about whether or not this is a good fit. So just wanted to
my sales tutor in the marketing degree said not to worry about questions.
Questions are good.
Be enthusiastic about questions, because it shows that they're like trying to convince themselves to buy.
Yeah. And it's just that, I mean, you can tell the energy too. If they have a lot of questions, but they're not working with you, they're just not following with the conversation. I mean, you can tell whether or not they're starting to believe you, or if they're just keep on hitting the block wall. When we start out the sales call, so now we actually get into the sales call, you just want to find out why they're contacting you. You just want to ask what brought you here today, focusing on them, saying nothing about you yet. Just focus on them so you can fully understand, what's going on? What would you reach out for me for? What's the motivation? What was the motivating factor to get them here? That is really helpful to know. Find out, this is really big. Find out if they have a vision or a specific project request. So you don't have to ask it like that. You can figure out your own way of asking this. But in your asking of what brought you here, try and figure out, and it'll probably be obvious. They'll either say, I'm really confused, I want to do this thing or have this goal, or they're going to say, I need a logo or I need a website. That would be an example of a project request. Something to the effect of like, well, I've been really wanting to redo the brand lately because I really want to attract this type of client, and whatever, our competitors are coming up and they're giving you this bigger problem than just, I need a logo. Then you have a vision on your hands. So identify whether or not in the beginning of as soon into the call as you can, try to identify what you're working with. And you probably could figure it out. If it's a specific, like, hey, I need this thing, that's a project request. If it's not, they have a bigger issue, that's a vision. And so what you're going to do, if they have a vision, you're going to use the 3-year question, and we have provided this for you in different documents. Just in case you don't have it, you can screenshot it. the Dan Sullivan 3-year question. So you're getting them to be forward focused. You're asking them, if we're having this discussion 3 years from today, and you're looking back over those 3 years, what has happened in your life, both personally and professionally, for you to feel happy with your progress. So you're getting them to live in the future and to be happy and feel the feeling that all those wonderful things have happened and tell you about it. So that's if they have a vision. And if they have the vision, again, you want to get the client in the future happy state to talk about what's happened. You're seeking to understand this large vision that the client wants to get to, and you're making note of everything they said. Write it down. Repeat back what you've heard. If you want to know more of how to work with this, do read Pricing Creativity, and that is talking about value-based pricing, but it also talks about how to price out a vision. So when you have the vision and working your way backwards, and how do you actually measure success, which we'll talk about a little bit, but if you really want to dig in deep, I would read that. If they have a specific project request, which happens a lot, and that's totally fine, you want to get them to brain dump what it is. You want to get them to brain dump what it is that they came to you for. So just like, tell me all about it. What you're looking for. And you're just wanting them to just brain dump everything about it. I want a new logo. Okay, why do you want a new logo? What's going on? Get them to brain dump on you. Take as many notes as you possibly can. And then what you're going to do is, once they feel understood and heard, you're going to pivot just a little bit to those 3 why questions from Jonathan Stark. So you could say something like this, and he has some videos I believe I shared from the future about this whole conversation. And he says, now that I have an idea of what you're looking for, can I ask you a few questions? I think Jonathan says something like how this fits into your business objectives or in the greater scheme of your business. And if done right, they typically be like, yeah, okay, sure. And that's when you go into the why questions of why this? So why do you need a website? Why can't you stick with what you have? And when you ask these questions, you're immediately flipping the table and having them, in a sense, in a nice way, prove to you why their idea of them getting a website done is a good idea for their business. And that, because you don't want to work on anything that's not valuable. And if it's not valuable to them and it's not going to move the needle for them, then why you shouldn't work on it. And you want to make sure to bring the most value to your client. So that's why you're asking these questions. And then why now? Why can't you wait 6 months? Is this really a rush? And they're like, oh, well, yeah, we're having these issues with the website and we're losing leads. And then you're fine. Oh, you're losing leads. Okay, well, what's going on? And you can start delving into that. And then the last question is, why me? So I'm a very expensive option here. This is an expensive endeavor. That's why I'm asking, is this really needed right now? Because to redo the whole website, to redo your funnels, this is going to be a lot. It's going to be an expensive endeavor. Is this a good idea? And am I the right person for this? Because I want to make sure that this is valuable to you, but I also don't want you to spend money where you shouldn't. So, do you have a cousin or anyone that can do this for you? You want them to say, why, no, I want you. And so you get them really to tell you why you're a good idea. And this works amazingly. So even if they come in, so a lot of you have asked what happens if they come in with a specific project request, that's okay. Use these questions. They work amazingly so that you can tell, is this really a good idea for you? Yes, Nick.
Just flagging 2 questions in chat whenever you want.
Yeah, we can talk about it.
Okay. Martin, do you want to hop on and ask your question?
Yeah, it's one a question about, finding the right client. What about is the right client that will get you a really good exposure in an industry you want to be, but doesn't have the right budget? And you always said, find the right budget, right client and everything. So he's the right client, absolutely, but doesn't have the money, but I really would like being in the industry. And I know that with that project, I will get exposure. Would you compromise on the budget in that situation?
Well, that's a good question. I think it goes back to value. How much do you value that exposure? And would you have paid that money to advertise in that industry? And if you actually feel like I am going to be introduced or people will know about me because of this, that's a personal choice for you to choose. But you have to see that it's actually valuable. You have to believe it's valuable, not the client. Because I always err on the side of, if I want to do something cheaper or free, I offer it. If someone asks me for it, cheaper or free, I typically don't do it. And I have some clients, like I had one come to me, I think it was my first strategy one, and he's like, listen, I have this budget. I understand it's low, and I completely understand if you say no. And I was like, you know what? I want to try the strategy thing. So I will take the budget, because for me, it was worth it. So you, as long as you know that it is worth it for you, but I wouldn't just do it if someone's like, oh, hey, I'll give you exposure. Like, that's a red flag. But if you believe it will, it could be an even value exchange there.
Martin, did you watch the Chris Do and Beeple thing? Yes, Amy, because Chris Do and Beeple spoke about exposure as recompense with opposing views.
I haven't watched a specific one, but I know quite a lot about, why don't you do these real cool things? I have 10,000 followers and, you get exposure. So I don't do that. But I already know the budget, and I already know that they will probably not go for it, but it's probably going to be the best project for my next year. And it's an industry that I always dreamt about being in. So it comes from me, really. Like, I know they don't have the budget. They didn't really ask to cut. They didn't offer me exposure. But I know the exposure will come from them. And it's just like I'm making a step forward to get it and to do it. But I don't want to, I will never initiate a discussion about exposure, because I know that's like, I mean, we are all creatives, right? We all know the pain of that. Like, every single one of us had a friend with lots of followers on whatever social media it is, and comes to us and say, hey, man, why don't you do me this? It will take you 5 minutes and we'll get you.
It'll look good on your CV.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I'm past that, but I know that I will get value from that. So probably I will just go for it.
Yeah, I think as long as it marketing too. If it's something that you're like, it's not just that you're doing a project and nobody knows about it. It's like, that's not marketing. But if it really will, if you're using it as case studies, there's so many points of value for you. If that's the case, then that is technically marketing, right? So there's that. There's also a story in Never Split the Difference of him. I forgot what exactly the situation was, but they couldn't pay his speaking. Something like they couldn't pay the author's price, but they ended up negotiating where he got his face on the cover of the magazine. It's like, well, yeah, of course they do that. That is a good value exchange. So you do have to realize, just is that valuable to you? Nick, did you want to add to that?
As long as we are making sure that we're making enough from good fit clients, then we can give ourselves the space to freely make decisions like that are good for us in the long term. Like, we have to be able to afford to do long-term oriented work by making sure that we have enough short-term oriented work. Otherwise, we get stuck in the loop that most of us know, which is, low budget. You can't get out of the cycle of.
Right. Yeah. You want to use these things as a stair step. And I wanted to give a story too that I might have shared before, but the agency that I will be working with, they got in contact with me because they saw me in my future. They saw that I did the cat hater survival kit. They thought it was hilarious. They liked my humor. They approached me and said, hey, we would love to do a website for you. Would you like to collaborate on this project and we'll expand on it? And I was like, yeah, sure. In a sense, like, you could see that as someone approaching a client, because like, yeah, I'm not making any money right now from that concept project, but they're still offering to do free work. So I could have, it could have been a client situation, and they offered to do it for free. Well, since then, we've not only worked together, I have since sent them jobs, and one ended up being $100,000 plus job for them. So they saw that, and they're big on doing stuff like that. Like, if they see an up and coming person, they will approach them and say, we want to do your website for you. And they'll do it for free, because they're like, we believe in what you're doing. And the person's like, no, I'll pay you. And they're like, no, like, seriously, we would love to do this for you. And they do that. But because of that, they know who to do this with, and they're approaching them that they have blown up in their first year just because of the right partnerships that they've made. So I just wanted to throw that out there too. And if you really do believe that this is a good person, then it could turn out well. Nick, did you have something to add? Your hand's still up.
I have Yari's question to jump in with when you wish.
Well, yeah, that's probably along these lines.
She's asking, you said that you'd like to answer objections before they happen in the marketing and on your site. How extensive is your sell page? You seem to steer more towards minimalism. So what do people see to get their questions answered before hopping on a call?
Typically it's they hear it. So I talk a lot. So they'll see me on podcasts, they'll hear my stories there. And typically the people I would say who come in with no objections, they've heard or read my blog posts, they've heard or seen me on the show, on The Futur, on other podcasts. And just by that, it's crazy how I don't even know if they listen to everything, but they build the trust just by seeing and hearing me talk. So I would say it's the videos are the main source of content. So I don't have long, extensive sales pages because I think by the time someone gets to a sales page, they need to be vetted by that time. So even by the time someone gets on a sales call with me, they need to be vetted somehow, some way. And so that's why I err on the side of minimalism on my site in what I say, because most of it's done on the top of the funnel, which is video. Did Ani, did you have a question?
Yeah, so I wanted to know, you're an influencer, right?
Mm-hmm.
You may not you might not want to say that.
If you say
it. So like the company, the agency, for instance, that reached out to you, I'm sure you have gotten a lot of interest since being on with The Futur. Mm-hmm. Like, how do you decipher between, I guess, what is like a legit incoming thing for you that you like I don't know how to say what I'm trying to say. Like, what makes you consider someone versus not consider someone?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I don't always know, but the more and more that I get messages and the more and more that people reach out to me, I can kind of sniff them out. So like the ones that are going to have a super low budget, they usually start with, how much do you cost for this? And they will just go straight into, how much do you charge for this? And it's like, how do we even know we're going to fit? I don't even want to give you a price yet. Like, we haven't even talked. I don't know who you are. So that is a huge red flag. And typically they're like, even if they have a budget, they're not a good person for me to work with because it's just not good. Like, they're just looking for anyone. It's like, what, are you shopping on price? That's the first question you ask me. So right. That's a big red flag. That's probably the main one, I would say. The other ones I typically will hop on a call with. I'll ask maybe a little bit of like, what are you trying to do? Or what's your, I sometimes ask them, what's your goal in the email or in the message that people are sending to me. And you can tell by their answers. Like, the more and more you talk with people and the more you can tell the difference between a good client and a bad one, they start sounding the same. And you're like, yes. You can't articulate why. You don't know what this is going to do for your business. I don't know. Mm-hmm. I also go off of references. Like, if it's a person that I know really well that referred them and I really respect that person, then I'm like, okay, this must be legit if it's coming from, so-and-so.
Okay. Thank you. That's good to know.
Yeah. Good questions. Going back to the sales conversation, I cannot stress this enough. If you forget everything when you go on a sales call, just remember these 3 questions. So if you forget literally everything I've said today, just remember these. You will be fine. And that's what I love about this conversation is it's so simple. It's not a big script that you have to learn. And it gets you to improv. Like, this is just a starting point for you then to go down the road of asking more questions. And that's what I really like to encourage you guys always, to empower you to use your own minds. How to measure success. If they have passed your why questions and you're like, yeah, this person's a good one to work with. You want to ask them things like, how will we know we've achieved this vision? So if it is a vision, how will we know that we've achieved it? Because that's, this is a big vision. We want to know that we got there. And it might not be that you're going to get them to that end vision. It might just be you're going to get them closer to that vision. So it could be, how do we know we've gotten closer to getting you to this vision? How can we measure the success of this project? And just stressing to them that you want to work on things that are valuable to them. You want to make sure that your clients are happy and that it is successful. And that's why you want to make sure to measure the success of this. And so Jonathan Stark talks a lot about that too. So you want to work on things that are valuable. Ani, did you have another question, or did you just not lower your hand? I want to make sure that I cover it.
Oh, no, sorry.
No, it's fine. You're fine. I just want to make sure. The other thing, and this again, go to Pricing Creativity if you want to get really good at value-based pricing. But what you want to do is help them when you're asking them how we're going to measure success, try to break it down with them into a SMART goal. So something that's specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-based. So get as specific as you can to measure this. So what would this look like for, if we were talking about the vision and someone's like, well, I want to take off a month a year. Like, okay, great. Well, what do you need to make that happen? You're like, well, I would need to make $500,000 in my business. Okay, great. So where are you now? Oh, so you'd have to double in revenue in the next 3 years. Okay, so now we're getting specific. So if you ask them, if someone has a vision, then you want to ask them, what do you need to have that vision come true? And that's where you're going to start to get actual measurable things that you can start breaking down. And then seeing what actually can you help them with? Because it might not be that you're able to help them with everything, but maybe you can help them with getting closer, getting one step closer even. That is successful. And so what you want to do is always, when you first go into the meeting, you want to find out, what are you guys aiming at? Like, what is the goal? How do you know you're going to get to the goal? Like, if I wanted to get to New York City, it's like, how will I know that I'm in New York City if I've never been to New York City before? Like, there's things you can measure. Like, you will read a sign that says New York City. You will see this. You will see the skyline. There's so many, you can look in your GPS. And so those are measurable results. Like, I can actually look and see, oh, I am at this destination. So that's what you're trying to do with your client. Talking about the budget. So if you have talked about the reason why they're doing this, you've talked about measurable results, you want to get to the budget. I know some people will vet the clients out very, very, very early on. I've tried different things, and I think bringing up budget, unless you have a very hard number and you're getting in a ton of leads that are not meeting your budget, you might want to say, I definitely don't want to waste your time, and I respect your time, and I would love to talk about your project. I just want to make sure that we're both on the same page, that I do charge, or my minimum is, or whatever you want to say, this, just so that I don't waste your time, and I can refer you to someone else who might fit better. And if they're like, no, that's totally fine. But now that I'm attracting more and more clients that can afford me, I don't say that at the beginning because I don't need to. So what I typically do then is bring it in at the end, and I'll say something like, do you have a budget in mind for this initiative or this project? If they say no, we want to gauge what feels too much to them. So we might say something like, were we thinking about something 100,000 plus, or are we thinking about, you can do the whole anchoring where you start high and low, like from 100,000 to 50,000. You could say something like, typically with endeavors like this, I've seen clients spend between X and X. You can give them gauges, and if they start getting really uncomfortable and say, oh my gosh, no, we weren't thinking of that at all, then you at least found a breaking point where they are, and you can start figuring out where at least they are thinking. Are you thinking more than, are you thinking between the 50,000 down to $25,000 range? And then they're like, yeah, if we could have some options between that. So there's ways of doing that. If it's a yes, if they just go, that once you ask, like, do you have a budget, and they say yes, then I would ask yourself, like, does it meet your minimum? Is that something that you can work with? Because sometimes clients will, if once you ask their budget, it's like 2 times, 3 times, 4 times more of what you would have said. So I do try to get what are they thinking first. That's what I typically go to. Before I get into that, I do want to say too, when I sell strategy, I normally sell it at I don't know if I've said it in here, I sell it at a flat rate. And so I come in at a flat rate with the strategy. So I typically don't do those ranges. I might do them because I say, listen, after to implement this, we can find a vendor that actually fits within whatever budget you have. Just know that this first starting point is going to be this amount. Nick, did you have something to add?
I forgot that I put my hand up there.
Oh.
I completely blanked out.
Okay.
So I read this really catchy, cool way of establishing budget, which was just kind of quirky and left field and well worth remembering, if just to give perspective. Let me see if I can gather it together into its some parts. Okay, so am I going to be able to? Why don't you know what? Give me 2 minutes and come back to me, okay?
Okay. I'm gonna lower your
Thanks.
hand and then put it back up when you need to. So that's what I do for budget. Then they say, well, what does this look like? You can figure out when to bring in to talk about your process, but I do this after the why conversation, after we talk about how to measure results. And then I talk about the process. Yes, Nick. I want to get you before you forget.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Okay, so the person has been unforthcoming with a budget. We're probably in the lower ranges, but they've sparked your interest because of what they're doing for whatever reasons. So you want to entertain the possibility of working with them, but you know there's going to be a pricing issue.
Mm-hmm.
So instead, and they're dancing around numbers. So you say, okay, look, normally I charge 10,000 base for strategy.
Mm-hmm.
Good news is I'm not going to charge you that. Now have a little, and then you say, so here's what I want you to do. I want you to close your eyes now. And then I want you to imagine a number that makes you slightly uncomfortable. And pause. Have you got that number? Yeah. Okay. That's what I'm going to charge you. And you haven't even asked them for the number, right? And like, what's the worst that can happen? They say the number is 500. But all you could do then is say, okay, well, that's actually under what I had hoped it would be. I thought I'd try that for fun. Didn't pay off. All the best. Yeah, I think I know someone who can help you for 500, right? Like it's not, you're not getting tied into anything. But if it goes right, you've probably got them to go up from, let's say they had $2,000 in their head, and now they're thinking, 500 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So they'll raise their budget. You've anchored, and they have named a number that they've come up with a number themselves without you doing nothing. So both of you are slightly unhappy, if you like, and therefore both of you are going to be happy. And it's quite clever and weird.
It is. Try it out and let me know how it works.
Yeah, will do.
Yeah, report back. That's very interesting. I personally, even if the person has a small budget, I just talked to somebody recently who was an awesome person. He was honest and said, listen, my budget is this much. I think it was like 900. And he said, I see the value in what you're doing. I need to make revenue first before in this particular area before I can reinvest, and I want to into strategy. And so I said, okay, totally understandable. And I helped him work out, and I gave him options. And I think I might have mentioned it to you guys. One of the options was you can hire me hourly for consulting, and I can help you work your way to get to the point that you can to make the revenue to invest into brand strategy. Or I can refer you to someone who actually I'd feel more comfortable with that would help you get a content strategy done, because he wanted to utilize his current audience to build the revenue to then invest into brand strategy. I said I can do either one of those. And so it was awesome because he was upfront with his budget and said, listen, I know this is not what you're thinking, but can you help me? And I was able to help him because he was so honest about where he was at. And so if someone's dancing around their number, I almost think, like, how good are you at business if you literally cannot talk about money? So I would question whether or not I even wanted to work with them, because if they're not forthcoming with their idea of how much is too much and not enough and whatever, if they are unable to say that and communicate, I don't know if I want them as a client. I really don't. And I would question if their business is going to go anywhere if they're unable to talk about money. And that goes for all of us. If we're the better that we can talk about money, and the easier it comes to us, that we're going to do much better in business, because it's all about that. So we have to talk about it. I wanted to give you guys this. I'm not going to read through the whole thing, but it's explaining your process. You don't have to explain it like this, but this is typically, I say, well, this is what my process is. And I tell them up, like straight up, I charge this amount. I charge $10,000 for strategy. This is what it entails. And I talk about how it's a 1 to 2 day workshop, that you'll walk away with a roadmap to get to your goals. And I repeat their goals to them again. Like, you know how you said you wanted to get here? Well, this is how we would do it. And so I have a firm price for discovery. However, with a little caveat, if it's a massive company like Casamigos that had approached me, I would definitely charge more. So mine is on a sliding scale. So for most people, it's 10,000. For very, very large brands, I would look like I didn't know what I was doing if I only came in at 10,000. So that's something that I had called Chris Do about when I was talking with Casamigos. I'm like, what do I do? Like, I have this massive, they just got bought for what, $2 billion. I'm like, this massive company. Yes, I might not be working with the CEOs in this respect, but I'm still doing strategy with the creative director. And he was like, well, we've charged anywhere between 30 and 80,000. So what do you feel comfortable saying? And that was really the gauge. It was like, what do you feel comfortable saying? So I would also say that, have a firm price if you'd like, but it can definitely go higher if you're working with a very, very large company. Nick, did you want to jump in?
Grant asks, do you charge more for group workshops?
I don't, because I like streamlining my process and only having one thing to think about. So I don't, I don't change it depending on the size of the group.
The other thing is, I mean, if you do that, are you risking commoditizing it again, right? Like it's just a numbers game again then instead of a value game, potentially.
Yeah, and I typically like to price things more towards the value of the goal of what we're trying to achieve versus the logistics of like how many days and how many hours and yeah. So Nick,
or how many people are in the room.
Yeah, where my firm price is, yeah, it's flat rate, but it also considers the value of the goal. So when I say 10K, then I'm trying to help my clients at minimum have $100,000 difference in their business. That's little. That's a minimum. But ideally, the more that I can track these results, my number could easily go up much higher. I feel much more comfortable making my number go up higher. The more that I personally can see like, oh, this has been a big effect, has had a huge effect on businesses. So it also goes in with my confidence. Ani.
No, I just wanted to tell a quick story of what happened in the my last sales conversation.
Mm-hmm.
This guy reached out and like before we started talking about money, he revealed that he's actually my cousin-in-law. And so I was like about to tell him, like, even though we're family, I was like, I know we're family. I was about to tell him that I'm not giving him a discount. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, I know we're family. And he cut me off and he's like, no, I'm paying your price. I don't want to hear it. I was like, oh, thank you.
Good.
and like I was so glad he swooped in because I didn't want to be the jerk, but yeah.
Good. I'm so glad. See, that's a person that understands your value. And that's what you want. You want to see that your client understands your value, but also the value of their problem, the value of that problem getting solved. Like you want everyone to see the value in everything. So that's awesome. Very cool. Thanks for sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
Nick, did you have something you wanted to add?
Not to add, another question in chat.
Yeah.
Rachel asks, for reference, would you be willing to share what price you proposed to Casamigos?
I was going to charge $30,000 because that was what I felt okay with coming from where I was at. I don't even know if at that point I had charged 10. So I was like, oh, I don't know. So it would have been 30. I've also pitched it with agencies before at 30 for companies that were around the $100 million mark. So, and that was them putting the number on it and me discussing it with them. And so they were doing it at 30. So, and then I think the agency I work with, our minimum's probably going to be 20, I want to say. So reach out with them about it, but yeah.
That is actually related to a question that just popped in my head, which is, do you have a kind of rule for yourself of who mentions the number first or anything like that?
No, I don't, because sometimes it's like you're going to be sitting there pulling teeth if you're doing that. It's like a game of chess. And so that's why I try to get them to say something. I try to get their reaction first. So either it's their budget or I get the reaction on a big number or something, just to see like, what am I dealing with here? Like, where do you think is too much? Sometimes I just come out and say, hey, I charge $10,000 for strategy. This is what I can do. This is how I can help you get to your goal. How does that sound? And you just stop and let them answer and don't try to justify anything.
And is that because you're so experienced knowing the type of people you're talking to, so that you know that you didn't just fuck yourself from a client who actually had 50,000?
Yeah. And to me, even if someone had 50, I know this might sound weird, but if I don't feel comfortable charging 50 for what I do, even if they had the money, I would personally be hesitant taking it. Because if I truly believe I can give you $10,000 worth of value, I might hesitate to take 50. I mean, our confidence level has to meet the same, like what we charge, right? And maybe some people are cool with that. I know like Krista would totally be fine. They'd be like, you want to give me more money? Cool. But I feel like my own personal integrity, that if I felt that, I don't know if I could give you $50,000 worth of value, I don't know if I would take it. If I believe I could, I should have charged that in the first place and figure out how to attract those clients. So that's my feeling towards that, is you have to feel comfortable with what you charge.
Am I getting the sense that you have because we've been looking at 10K as a baseline for you.
Yeah.
Does that mean that you've got a cap of, am I reading like 30, 40 or something?
I don't know necessarily if I have a cap that I know of yet. I mean, if someone were to say, I want to pay you $150,000 to do strategy, I would be like, what's your goal? I want to see if I truly feel that I could create that much value for you. I'd want to see if I was a good fit for that. So I'd have to see.
Can I ask what the most you've charged is? I completely understand if that's something you don't want to discuss.
No, the most I've charged is $10,000 for strategy. The most I've proposed is 30. So I have proposed 30, but that was through like working with other people and Casamigos, which I didn't even get to proposing that. It was like right before I was to propose it, he quit. So, yeah. We want to go over pricing deliverables really quick after strategy. A lot of you have asked about that. So help the client break down. So you sell strategy first. Ideally, we'll talk about how to break it from deliverables later, but let's just say you've sold strategy alone. When you get to the goals and prioritization portion, that's where you're going to help the client figure out how much money makes sense to allot to each initiative. Because that's one big thing you're helping them with, is helping them decide how much money. If we were to do identity, you could even say, if you offer identity, you could say, if you were to go with me for identity, it would be this amount of money if you have only sold strategy alone. You could say something like that. You could help them. I mean, ideally, you want to help them allocate their funds appropriately so they're not wasting it on things that aren't going to move the needle. So you want to find what's the most valuable deliverable for them that is actually going to move things forward, and help them prioritize that, and then help them say, well, what makes sense to invest in this given what we believe the value it's going to create for you. Because you can find someone on Fiverr to do stuff, but you can also find an amazing award-winning design agency to do it. So there you can, just like you can get to the other side of the United States by taking a plane, taking a bus, taking a car, or walking. So, one's cheaper than the other and faster or slower. So we can do anything for any budget. That doesn't mean it's going to be good. So help them make those decisions. Give them referrals as much as you can for things that you don't do. And you can offer to do things. You can even offer to do services that you didn't offer before. Say, hey, I haven't done this yet. I haven't done social media before or strategy for it, but I would love to start. If you were to go with me, I could do it for this amount for you. So you can start expanding your own services. I've done that with proposing interior design or being a consultant for interior design. I've tried, different things. And if it's consulting, I usually will do that. I personally don't like executing anything. And so I don't offer that at all anymore. So you're helping the client. You're trying to write the proposal with the client in the meeting. So essentially you're getting paid to write your deliverable proposal if you do offer deliverables. So that they know ahead of time, oh, this is generally what we can look at for this thing. You want to be on a partnership with them. Like, this is really you sitting down with them at the table and looking at the numbers and saying, this is what the best idea is. And it's not just to get you more money, which I know you guys aren't like that, but just to say that it's not that you can get the most money out of them. It's what makes the most sense for them and their business. And if it's way too low, if you realize, oh, they only have $2,500 to invest in brand identity, then hook them up with someone that can do a really good job for $2,500. That's your job as a strategist, is helping them get to where they're going the best way possible. But we'll talk about deliverables too, about how to break it apart. It's a conversation. Write the proposal with them. I just said that. So, and that's not, I hate when it doesn't switch to an apostrophe. It's annoying. How to charge $10,000 for strategy. I wanted to help you guys. I say 10K. That doesn't mean you. I mean, some of you I know, like Annalie, you're charging a lot more too. 10K is just my benchmark, because that's what my mind, when I was learning it, was like 10K, 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 because Chris sold one of his first ones for 10,000 and it took him months, from what I understand of his story, to land that one. And I was like, okay, I want to charge that, but I don't want to just wait and charge it all at once. I wanted to build my confidence along the way. And so I did take a path to 10,000. What I want for you is pick whatever your 10,000 is. Maybe it is 10,000. Maybe it's 5. Maybe it's 50. Whatever it is that you see yourself, just zero in on that. Whatever that number is that you're like, man, if I could charge strategy for X amount of dollars, that would be awesome. And for me, it was 10,000, and I met that, and now I'm like, oh, I could totally charge more. But that was like the one mountain that I wanted to get to. And so figure out what your mountain is. Figure out where are you aiming, even if it's just for this next year. What are you aiming at? I would say in the next year, pick. What's your number? Edwin, and then Ani.
A quick question. Have you ever had a client come back for another brand strategy session, and did you up your rate on them, or did you charge them the same thing?
Typically, if we've done a pretty good job in the brand strategy session, then I wouldn't up my rate. We wouldn't have to redo the whole thing. It's usually course correcting. So it's consulting. And so I would offer them something else, like a refresh or just hourly consulting. So I've had that happen. I've had a business come to me where they had 2 businesses and they did one, I want to say at 10. So I think I was pretty sure it was at 10. And then they had another business, and I was just going to charge them the same amount because I'm like, they already paid 10 and it was within the same year. If I were to up my prices a few years later and they came back to me and wanted to redo things, I would charge them most likely what I was at, whatever price I was at. But if it was within the year, it's probably the same price. But you shouldn't have to completely redo everything. Hopefully not. Any follow-up with that, Edwin?
No, that's good.
Okay.
Thank you.
And then Ani, and then I think Amy raised her hand.
My question was, I would love to hit the 10K mark, but I really want to focus in on solopreneurs. Has that, in your experience, has that been possible, or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think our assumption is that solopreneurs, just because they're solo, they're not going to make that much money. I would say that I would really identify who's your ideal client and what is their income. Because I know that, people can make, especially influencers too, or people who are getting known for writing books or speaking They make, anywhere between 250,000 and $1 million before even getting a team of people. And so if you think of that, if you're helping that type of person, there's definitely room for 10,000 that you can create value for 10,000. So it has to do with your ideal client, because just because they're a solopreneur doesn't say much. You have to find like, who are they? What industry are they working in? What are they trying to accomplish? What's their financial goals? What's their personal goals? I go back to that example of the client who came to me who was a lawyer that wanted to be a blogger and do her own thing. And now she's creating videos, but she felt that transition to her was worth $5,000 for strategy to come to me. So it's a personal thing too, especially with solopreneurs. So what's the personal thing that you're helping them with that is worth $10,000? That could be clarity, focus, and a roadmap to their goals. That's worth a lot.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Amy, did you not have a question anymore, Amy? I know you had your hand up. Maybe not. Okay.
Amy had a question in chat.
Yeah, Amy, did you want to jump on?
Not there to talk.
She might not be. Okay, she can hop on later. I also wanted to say, I was on the Honest Designers podcast, which should launch, I don't know when they're going to come out with it, but it was with Tom Ross, Dustin Lee, and Lisa. And Dustin opposed me like hard about like, why do I need strategy? That's a lot of money. And he came in with objections, and he was like, as a business owner, he was coming up with objections, not just as like an act. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is live, like recorded on a podcast. This is so awkward. But in the end, in our conversation, I ended up flipping him because I had said the thing I just said to Ani is, how much would you pay, Dustin, for clarity, for focus, and for a roadmap to your goals? What would you pay for that? And he goes, well, when you put it like that, that's priceless. Like that, I need that. And I'm like, exactly. Like that's what I can't, because he was like, well, how can you measure results? Well, because we can't really measure that. And, it's not about click-through rates. And like he was looking at end results, like how Facebook ads, because he hired someone, I think, for Facebook ads, and it didn't get him anywhere. And I said, this is beyond that. This is more like personal emotions are dealt with this. So I said, what would you pay for clarity? And he was like, oh my gosh, that's true. So it was a really interesting conversation that, I'll share with you guys when it's out, but it kind of goes in with Ani. Just because they're a solopreneur doesn't mean that they're only focused on numbers. They're focused on their emotions too, which everyone buys on emotions, but that's a different topic. Amy, did you want to hop on? I see your hands back up.
Yeah, I was able to talk, but then all of a sudden I had to talk with somebody else for a second.
Okay.
But my question is, when you had the deliverables slide up earlier, and it brought up the thought of when we got to that budget column in the priorities and goals section of strategy, how do you structure that conversation to ask for what kind of budget they're looking for each deliverable that we discovered in the strategy session? Like, do you straight up ask them how much do they have to spend for brand strategy, or do you structure it in a specific way to fill in that column correctly?
Yeah, so I would only highlight the things that they would need to be done in the next 3 months. That's number one, because you're going to have a list of priorities that are tons, but you got to prioritize it. So I would start with just the chunk that is the short term that needs to happen right now. And then I would go through and say, do we have an idea of what you're hoping to spend for this? And if they're like, oh, no, that's why we need you, typically they don't know, because they might have a big number, and if they have a big number for the initiative, you want to write it at the top and say, okay, we're working with 50,000. We're working with 100,000. We want to allot these. We want to put the money where it needs to be, maybe save some for later. And then say, so could we say maybe a good range might be between 5,000 and 15,000 to invest in, because it's a very big priority. So the big priorities that are going to have the most impact, you want to put more money towards, more resources towards, because you don't want to put all that money, time, and effort into something that's not going to give you a big payoff. So I would look at the priorities and say, okay, this is going to have a massive impact. We want to allocate most of our funds there. You might even tell them that. Be like, we want to put most of the funds in this because we know it's going to have a big impact here. And then work it out with them and what makes sense. And then figure out how are you going to find someone that fits that budget, right? Then you actually have budgets down. So when they have conversations with vendors, they can say, hey, listen, this is our budget. And if the person asks why, they're like, because we did a full strategy session and this is what makes most sense and what's going to move the needle for a business. So this is our number. So yeah, you want to prioritize and then prioritize where the money should go and help them figure it out too.
Mm-hmm. Follow up to that. How much would it be, how much of the numbers would come from suggestions from the facilitator versus suggestions from the client?
I would say it depends. It depends on how much they know they have allotted. They might not know. They might be like, I don't know how much we should have at all. So it depends too on what the goal is. So you want to go back to the goal and then what makes sense, the most sense for them to invest to reach that goal. And just ask them like, hey, you want to gain $1 million in revenue. What do you think makes sense? You've already invested 10,000, let's say, for strategy. What makes sense, or what could you set aside to reach that $1 million goal? If they're like, oh, we only could set aside 5,000 more, it's like, do you really think that's going to have that big of an impact then for you to reach that $1 million goal? And they're like, oh, yeah, probably not. So you can just ask them those questions, and the questions you ask will uncover what you need. Because you don't need to come in with all the information. You just need to come in with questions.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Nick, do you have something to add?
May I quickly add on to your previous point and the anecdote therein?
Sure.
Well, firstly, thanks so much for that anecdote. That was gold, especially because the message akin to I will help you provide clarity, a sure step upon a clear path, focus, etc. These are the sorts of things that I keep coming up with and then dismissing as being too vague or general or ambiguous. So it's great to hear the power of them, to remind myself to be okay with that and stop trying to be completely distinct and specific on everything.
Yeah.
And then secondly, I'd love to read out this one line from Jonathan Stark about strategy. Do you want to, because I took a note of it the other day, and it's very pertinent to what you just said. So here's Jonathan Stark on strategy, right? Strategy is the method for differentiating between opportunity and distractions. It helps you know what to say no to. Otherwise, trying out different tactics blindly is haphazard at best. Fails like these cost time and money.
That's perfect.
That's like pretty damn convincing, isn't it?
That's brilliant.
And story brand, wrap it up in 3 words. Clarity produces results.
Boom. Just copy those quotes, give credit, and put it on your website. Exactly. Yes. And I would say that's the main goal of strategy. All your content that is going to position you as an expert, talk about and give examples of how that's true. How did you bring clarity to someone? How did someone have an aha moment? When I told that to Dustin, me showing that on the podcast right there positions me as an expert. So even Tom brought up at the end, and I don't know if it was recorded when we were recapping, Dustin's like, I'm really sorry. I realized after I said that, dang it, she's not going to like me. I'm like, is that how you welcome guests? Thanks. You just object to them right away. But it was just his natural, like, visceral emotion. But even Tom said, like, yeah, but by the end of it, you flipped him. And I didn't even mean to flip him. I was just trying to learn how to communicate better to him of what the value was. And in doing so, it ended up flipping him. So exactly. Nick, those were awesome. Awesome quotes. Thank you for sharing those. Do you have them, could you copy and paste them into the group? The Jonathan Stark and
I will write them into a post, yeah.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Because I think we need to read that to ourselves to understand the value of it as well. So going back to you guys, getting to your goal, we're just going to use 10K, but insert your number there, whatever that is what is your goal? Is it to sell it separately? Because I know some of you guys, that is a goal for you. Is it to sell it for 10K for strategy alone? By when would you like this to happen? I really would love it if you guys had next year as your goal, whatever it is. So if you want to sell it for 10, 5, whatever, by the end of the year, next year, what are you aiming at? Where are you pointed? So get that down, write it down on a piece of paper. Will you Also ask yourself, will you work your way up, or are you going to start high? So are you going to take the Chris Do approach where you're going to keep asking for, let's say your number is 10K, you're going to keep asking for 10K until somebody says yes? Or are you going to take my way where it's, you don't have to, not, my way is not better than his, but just different. Are you going to stair step your way all the way there? The one good thing about stair stepping your way is that in the time that he then grew exponentially from there, but he took 8-9 months to get 10K after clients saying no to him. I took, 8-9 months to get to 10K, but with all the other clients in between. And I think I added up and it was almost 20K that I made in that 10 months. So you can think of it like that too. It depends on what you need, and it depends on what your risk level is and your confidence. So decide what you want to do there. You can double every time. That's a really good approach to take, especially if you're not charging for it at all right now. Double it every time. And then I will show my process. So I put a note there for myself. This is my process I have showed before, but first off was I used a questionnaire. I didn't charge anything for it. I learned strategy. That's where you guys are at right now. I offered 5 free strategy sessions. You do not have to do that. I did that for my own confidence level. Then I sold it at 1,000. I sold it at 2,500, 5,000, and 10,000. Somewhere in here, like here had some deliverables with it. I had deliverables at the 2,500. I started splitting it at 5, where just strategy was $5,000, and then went up from there. So you don't have to do this exactly. I would just say know where you're headed, because I knew I had my goal set on 10K. Now I kind of deviated and was like, ooh, deliverables. Oh, I'll go down to 5. Oh, and then I ended up at 10K. So as long as you know where you're headed, you don't have to have this all mapped out. I would say, this is what I would tell you though, have your end goal solid, like you know where you're headed. Have your next step solid. So that's the 2 things that I would tell you to do right now, is wherever you're at. So if you're at step 3, if you've just learned strategy, I would say either decide, is your next thing going to be, I want to land it for however much you want to land it for. That will be your next step. Or do you want to offer things for free? Are you still at that stage? That's fine too. Just decide what your next step is and decide where you're headed. Nick, did you want to jump on?
Only to add that it's imperative that we know our baseline. Like, know what you can't afford to go under by Jesus. Because I know that as creatives, we're all really good at undercutting ourselves. So I always want to make that point.
Yeah. Be aware of your minimum. And while you're doing all this stuff, this doesn't mean that you can't continue doing what you already know you can make money at. So if you're already, like I was doing dental, that dang dental marketing that I was doing probably up until up until step 5. I still had design clients. Even through 10,000, I had design clients on the side that I knew were bringing in recurring revenue, and that they were clients of mine for 4 years. And so I actually just fired my last design client 2 months ago completely. So I still had a design client I didn't tell anybody about, but just because it still brought in revenue. So you guys can still be working on all your other stuff that brings in the money that you need to do to stay alive. That's totally fine. Just know where you're headed. I think it's so, so important that you make that decision, that you're like, no matter what, I'm going to figure out how to get there. You guys are doing that by just merely being here. I think you have said that in one way or another, that yes, you're headed towards that. So pick what you're going to be aiming at towards the end of next year. So by the end of 2020, where do you want to be? If you want to be at 10,000, what I would really hope that you guys would do, maybe we can start a thread. I'm going to put a note for that. A 10K thread that you guys can put, like, declare whatever it is that your goal is. Like, what is it in regards to strategy? Let's all make that declaration for next year. So Nick, did you want to add something?
Funnily enough, I just had a very similar instinct, which was to ask everyone here, if you're happy to, would you be interested now if we all just stick the number that we're charging now, or at least, if you haven't done it yet, the number that you feel slightly uncomfortable with, but happy to and eager to charge next?
Yeah. Let's do, I would love to know where everyone's at. And there's no shame if you're not charging anything. And there's no shame if you're charging a lot or 1,000 or anything. Like, there's no judgment here. So if you guys are comfortable, put where at right now, what you're charging. Even if it's 0, put 0. Because I would love to see, I would just even want to see the map of like where we all starting, and then what the next step is and what the end goal is.
Martin just managed to do 5K. Nice, Martin.
Good job, Martin.
And I love
awesome.
Annie's. I really love that Annie is at. Did you see this in chat, Melinda? So
No,
Annie
I didn't
has
know
charged 1,111.
Oh, I remember her posting that in the group. That was awesome. Love that. So we got 5K. That's awesome.
Yeah.
1,001.
E3500. Lauren won. Boom. Oh, damn, Rachel. 6,500 for brand and social strategy, or $4,000 alone. 2,500, 3K, 1,800 or 1,800.
Good job. You guys are doing really well.
5K soon. Oh, hi.
Okay,
Chloe.
so now I would love to know, what are you aiming at the end of 2020? And that could be that you want to separate it from deliverables also. So I would say add in how much do you want to charge, and then what the terms are. What, Nick?
Lauren, it's like a trillion K or something. She just put a lot of zeros. I don't know.
Yes. What are you guys aiming at?
So what do we want for the end of 2020?
Yeah. How much do you want to charge? And ideally it would be separate from everything, unless you guys do have packages, but for just strategy alone. What are we looking at? Because I'm not looking at the chat, Nick.
Oh, I'll tell you now. Sorry, I was just amending mine to say, like, what I'd really love to be able to do by the end of next year is have one client where there's like strategy plus design for between 20 and 30. That'd be fucking amazing.
Oh, good.
We are getting back. Oh shit. Grant's aiming for 20K.
Good. That's awesome.
Annie, 10K. 10K for Marty. Big goals, 8 to 10K. Yeah, I mean, you've done something with your 10K marker. Apparently, I expect people are afraid to go above 10 because you're at 10 as well. 12.
Well, just wait. When I land something bigger, guys, I will tell you. So then, I hope. See, I used to teach piano when I was like 16 to 22, and I always found it amazing when a student would surpass me, and it would happen once in a while. And that's like, oh my gosh, if one of you guys, I would say, like, Grant, go for 20, please go for more than what I do. I'm definitely not the cap for things. I'm just teaching you at this step in the process, which mine will be, I'll have more steps later.
Just realized I've been fucking privately messaging Lauren things that I meant to be texted to the group, like 15 good. There's a comment here from Edwin, which is very, very pertinent, and we should call upon it. So he says, end 2020, 5,000. I feel like I'm not believing in myself, though, because it's mainly clients in the online space.
Why is that online space not?
Yeah, just to elaborate. So one of the things that's kind of like a block in my head is just, I feel like you can charge 10K and up if you're kind of in person with them. There's something about that dynamic of working with you in person that kind of makes it worthwhile. But then if I'm online and I have I'm doing it off camera, there's something in my head that's just like, can I really get away with like charging 10K for this? And
is the value? Yeah, that totally is legit. That's a total legit feeling that you have. Do you feel that the value you can create changes depending on if you're in person or not?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's just really like, it seems like a really stupid, shallow thing. I know for sure that whatever I do in terms of talking to the person will really help them. But I'm wondering if people would be kind of miffed by the fact that it's an engagement that's off the camera and not in person.
Well, like I said, that's a completely legitimate thing to think, that if you're, on video, that's not going to be as valuable as in person. It sounds like you're not fully convinced that it's the same value because someone else might think it's not the same value. That's what I'm hearing. Like, because they don't see the value, you don't see the value.
I'm pretty sure it's just me. Like, I figured you'd have like an answer to it that would kind of like dispel it. I mean, have you charged people above 10K and just did it online?
I've charged people 10K. My last client was 10K and they were in Australia, and we had to do everything this way, everything. And they were totally fine with it. I know some people that end up traveling. So like Fabian wants to travel and be in person. He believes it is valuable to be in person. I have found that I create the same value whether I'm in person or not. I just have shared, I don't know if with you guys or not, but if there is a client with more than 2 people on the client end, I really try to have it in person, because at that point, I can't manage everybody's energy in the room. I feel like I can't be the leader that I want to be in it. So I have a stipulation that if it's more than 2 people on client side, that I will figure out some way of being in person. So that's how I do it. But because I've seen it go south when you have too many people on their side and they're like on their phones, or people are walking in, or can be bad. So
Dan, that's a great point, that you can't control those little things that you can in person.
Yeah.
You're just not going to be able to.
Yeah. And I find that 2 people too, like you can see it's really easy when it's just me and there are 2 people on the client end. It's very, very easy to do that. And usually they're in different places too. Not always, but a lot of times they're in different places. I've also done it where one of the partners were with me in person and we called into the owner. So I've done it that way as well, and that worked fine. But again, more than that, it doesn't go well. And it's just, you lose some control that you need. Did you have anything to add?
Including, as Martin says, it's hard to bring snacks. Grant asks, who was it in Oz? With many exclamation marks. And also Lauren is asking if you travel much with work, Melinda.
Oh, I don't travel much with client work. I go to a ton of conferences now. Like that's one of my goals too, is to go to conferences. But no, I personally don't, just because I like being home. And then Grant, it was Jason Stevenson. I don't remember where he exactly was in Australia, but if you look him up, he's on YouTube. He has a very, very large following. Meditation. How to ditch deliverables. So if you do want to ditch deliverables, you don't have to, but start baking strategy into your current process. So being like phase 1, you could do that. You could also break it away as phase 1 and say, I charge this amount for phase 1, give them a range for the deliverables, or tell them what the price is. I can actually show you I will be showing you a proposal of how I did that. And then you can tell them, once we know how to allocate your funds and what to build to reach your goals, I'll refer you to the best vendor to execute. So you can give them a heads up. Like, I might not be the one, I most likely won't be the one to execute this stuff, but I will help you understand who to go to, who would be the best fit. Sometimes I even refer them and I say, I don't know what they're going to charge you. This is what budget you can tell them, but I said, I would highly recommend you work with them. So if you can find the money somewhere, do it, because I highly, highly recommend that you work with these people. So then the clients trust you at that point and they want to do what you suggest. Strategy is easier to sell separately when your client is vision focused versus project focused, because remember, vision focused is like big picture. It's worth way more money to them as well as you. The value is way bigger if it's a vision. If you're just solving a project, it's kind of going back to that pyramid that we talked about at the very, very, very beginning of this whole boot camp, where it's like you're living more in like the project and creative strategy and deliverables land, not the vision land, which the vision land's like very, very big. It's seeing the whole business and what the business is going to do for your client's life and business. So that's why you want to see vision focus is just a bigger problem that you're solving. Project focused is not. So just know that, and know that you can charge more if it's vision focused. I want to show the proposal really quick. I will be sharing this with you if I haven't already. So this proposal, I just list out the goals from the sales call. I talk about the main goal or the main vision that we're aiming at. I put of note that things depend on the scope, and that the price could be different after we facilitated the workshop. This is what I typically send them This is nothing new. This is something we've already talked about in the sales call. So it should be that you're just recapping what you've said in the sales call, maybe giving them more details, because I'm not going to say all this in the sales call. I'll tell them how many weeks it's going to take. I'll tell them generally, it starts out with this workshop and then it lasts this long and it's this amount of money. Yes, Nick. Did you want
to? Come back to me when you're at a good break. I'm just going to write the question down. I'm just flagging it for later. Okay, so this is with brand identity. So if they come and you figured out like, okay, it is a good idea that we also do brand identity. I've put this in here too. This, you can change out anything you want, price or whatever. I had on here additional services at one point I had offered. So I sometimes tell them, sometimes I'll put how much I typically charge or put ranges. I didn't because I don't know why. I put estimated timeline as well for them. I don't think I offered website and email. I don't know why it's on there. It could be, maybe I had thought about doing that. Project total. So I broke it down into strategy was 10, brand identity was 7,500. Grant, you had asked me how much I charged for identity. The last identity project I did was this. So it was 10,000 for strategy and identity was 7,500. If I were to do it now, it'd probably be 20 because I don't want to do identity. So I probably won't do it at all, but, and that was a question also. I want to go over questions that you had asked. I have a list of them. But someone asked, like, as strategy is increasing, how much would deliverables be in comparison? And I would still go back to, once you get to that goals and priorities time, what's the budget they have left? What's the budget? What's the goal that they're trying to reach? And if you have something that's going to make a huge impact, they might want to spend $150,000 on creating an amazing website, because they know that's going to make a huge difference in implementing this strategy. So it becomes less about comparing strategy to deliverables and more so comparing the price of things to the goal and to the impact it's going to make on the business. So that's how I would start to think about things. The more you can is put it in perspective of you're pricing things based on the value it's creating, not in comparison with each other. So that's what I hope to get you guys to think about. Nick, did you want to? Yeah, but just before I go to the question proper, was that particular identity that you just quoted for there, was that quite a closed circuit? It wasn't like a large scale, lots and lots of assets and things. That was quite
it wasn't
small,
a lot of assets. It was a stylescape. It was a logo. And it was a suggested photography and a very limited style guide. Very limited. So it wasn't like
the price took me back there. Yeah.
No. Yeah. So really it was like pretty much a logo and a color palette.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah.
So
welcome.
The question.
Yeah.
Blair Ends pretty much has 3 calls from the time the person picks up the phone and says, "Hi, how are you?" What about you? Is there a specific set of calls or interactions you have before we're in to strategy?
Well, I think Blair Ends has mentioned that sometimes it's all the whole conversation is done at once. I think he breaks it up. I don't think it's separate calls always. I think
I thought that he said that it's very wise to actually split them up. Maybe I'm making that up then.
Did you hear it in a video or in the book?
No, the Win Without Pitching.
Okay, I could be totally wrong. I'm thinking price and creativity. But if you come across that, let me know, because I could be totally wrong, and I speed read inside sometimes.
How they hear?
I have I only have one call typically, and that's if I can get all the key stakeholders on the phone. If the decision makers are there, it doesn't usually last longer than 1 or 2 calls. Sometimes I've had multiple because I didn't have everybody on the phone call. And so I had to go through it with like the marketing director, and then we got the CEO. So, but yeah, Nick, share that if you come across it or.
Well, check this out. So I went to Blair Ends, last year?
Yeah, because it was I thought he said that you can have it in one, you can have those separate conversations, but in the same call.
Yeah, well, that makes sense in an adaptive, flexible way. And I just took this very literally, perhaps. So he gave this out at the thing. Why can't when I go left, this goes right? So I keep getting really confused. So I got this booklet at the thing, and we've got yoink. The probative conversation, the qualifying conversation, the value conversation, and the closing conversation.
Yeah.
And regardless of whether it all happens on one call or not, these are 4 distinct modes of thinking to go through before you begin. So I was just wondering if you've got the same sort of rigid or habituated or whatever.
I started with his thing and I adapted it just because it was very hard to get to a value conversation if I was unable to get the client to think in vision. And so that's why I have a mix of, it's like a choose your own ending. Like if they talk vision, go to Blair Enns. If they talk project, go to Jonathan Stark and use theirs. So it's like a choose your own ending. But yeah, I really like Pricing Creativity. I think it's a really good book to learn. It's just very hard to implement.
It's also hard to afford.
It is a little hard to afford. Yeah, exactly. But just know that if you do get Pricing Creativity, it is hard. It's harder to implement for sure, but worth it if you're able to. What to include in your proposal, which you just saw, goals, a recap of what you talked about in the sales conversation, a rough timeline, and then say the price before you show a price. That's a big thing, I think, in Win Without Pitching, is whatever you, or with Christo, I don't know, say it in the call. So do not surprise them with any number in the proposal, even a range of what what's going to come afterwards or what you charge for consulting. You say it in the sales call so that they're prepared. So nothing they see is new information, that it's just a recap of what you previously talked about. I want to talk about those questions that you guys had asked previously to make sure I got that. I want to talk about the assignment really quick. And then I'll go to Edwin in 1 second. So we'll want to know, practice your sales conversation with you could practice this with your partner, practice it on your next sales call, plot out your plan to 10K and above or 20K or whatever you guys are at. And then when you reach your goal, please, please, please message me. I would love to use you guys as case studies and share your stories with everybody. So it would be very encouraging if you guys did that. We also will start a thread for 10K. So we'll share where we're at now and where we're headed for next year. And then always just don't overthink, but I'm going to stop sharing, open up your questions, and then Edwin, you had a question. Oh, you're on mute.
Yeah, in regards to the Pricing Creativity book, I just went on Blair Enns' site real quick, and he has a thing where you can request pricing for a team if it's more than 6 people. Do you think we could do that for our group?
We could. I can reach out. Yeah, thank you for looking at that.
Awesome.
Cool. That's awesome. Thank you for doing that. And then your questions really quick. I know we had some from last time that Nick saved for me, so I just want to rapid fire through those. And then any other questions that you guys have, please bring to the Q&As, and I will finish there just because we're over right now. Rachel had asked that, I don't know if we've already done this. I just want to make sure. She asked about copywriting, how copywriting plays in. Rachel, do you still have that question about copywriting? This was like from last week.
Yeah, I'd love to know that, because right now, so I mentioned that what I'm offering is like, I thought that it was brand strategy and identity, but really I've been learning through this course, like, wow, how much is missing. It's really that roadmap aspect. Mm-hmm. So I'm trying to break everything out, but in the deck that we offer currently, and I say we, because I work, in partnership, these are clients, who come through the PR agency, and the number that I mentioned, the 6,500, it's like, oh my gosh, it's so much easier to get people when they're already used to paying like $10,000 for PR. Mm-hmm. But as I mentioned initially, just because I think it's helpful for people to hear maybe, is they don't necessarily value what I do. So it's going to be really interesting to see if I can charge that same amount to other businesses, which is why I'm looking towards high end. But anyway, so what we offer right now is it kind of incorporates copywriting as well. Like we write their mission statement, we write their differentiating factors, we write their bios, the founder bios. We do all of this, and when we sell it, especially because it's often in conjunction with like website design and stuff, it's like we kind of sell it in the sense that when we create this copy up front, we can apply it to their social media headers, we can apply it to their website, we can apply it to all these different places, and then they really see the value in saying, oh, I get it. If I just hire you to do website copy or website design, then that messaging might not feel cohesive across our marketing materials, and that really helps them to value this initial deck. Mm-hmm. But if now I'm thinking what I want to do is break it out separately and say, okay, here's the strategy, and sell it more similarly to how you do it, really focusing on the marketing aspect. And then if they want the copy, maybe also sell like a brand identity deck that is more close to kind of what I offer now. But I don't know how to price the copy aspect of that, how that fits in.
Yeah, I actually include high-level messaging in strategy. Mm-hmm. So I do combine it all. I think it would be similar if I broke it apart. It would be similar to like identity is one thing, messaging is another, strategy is another. That's how I would be thinking of it, but I combine high-level messaging and strategy together.
So maybe if I'm trying to make that jump like from 65 to 10,000, then maybe I don't even have to worry about it. Maybe that's just kind of like implied.
Right.
Maybe I just keep it. Maybe it's just a question of like breaking things out a bit differently, and that copywriting price is already included.
Yeah. I tried to break things apart a lot at the beginning, and I tried different things. Like, what if I do identity? What if I charge different for new user personas? Or what if I did another? And for me, it just became like, it was like a menu, a restaurant menu. And I was like, I'm over it. So then I just said, it's 10,000 for all this. And because it was just way too much for me. So
no, I'm with you. And when it's like started to offer like a menu, then what happens, and this is a problem I run into all the time, is clients like spend all their budget up front, and then 3 months later, they're like, all right, like, let's see what line item we can cross off. And it's always strategy. And it makes me feel like such shit, because like, I love the creative consulting, and like there are flex hours for design and consulting and all like the emails the clients send all the time. It's like wrapped in, and then they just want to slash it. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. Like, now you're still going to expect these same services for free because you're used to them. And it's so yucky. So I really love how you're just take it or leave it. It's all included. The ongoing is a different conversation.
Yeah. And you'll have people that will pay it, you will. And the ones that fight too much we all need to learn how to attract the ones that will pay it and who do value it. And there are out there,
Yeah. I love what you said about like, just maybe finding them in different places. So
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. You're welcome. Grant, I think I saw a message that was asking about messaging. We held off on going deeper into messaging just because you guys were at a different spot last week. So I didn't want to overwhelm in one thing when we really needed to talk about others. But we have 3 Q&As this week, our normal times, Wednesday, 2 on Friday. So I do need to wrap up because I have a podcast I need to record. So bring all of your great questions there. We can deep dive into messaging. Whatever is left, it doesn't have to be about selling strategy. Whatever is left that you guys feel still unanswered, please bring it to the Q&As. I want to make sure that you guys are going to get all the value you possibly can and get what you need to get to your goal next year. So I will be offering maybe a check-in. I don't know how often yet, but for you guys, I do want to do a check-in for you or a Q&A following this. So even though the course ends this week, I want to make sure to still support you guys. So I'll put that on the calendars for us too coming up. And I don't know how often it'll be or whatnot, but I'll kind of gauge it off of this week. And if you guys have not done so yet, I think most of you have, but I did post in the group that you can, I'm offering 30 minutes with me for you guys because you're here in the course. So one-on-ones, personal with me, 30 minutes. I think most of you have signed up, but if you're listening to this recording, please go and claim your 30-minute spot. Hopefully they're not all shut, but I'll be opening up more times if there are. So DM me if you did not get a time or if there's not one open, or especially for your time zone. Yeah, so Rachel, and it wasn't an email that I sent earlier today too. Oh, you didn't see any January. Let me look at my calendar. I'll open up some time. So I will open times for that. And yeah, DM me if you looked and you still can't find a time. I'll get something on there for you. So thanks so much for all your great questions. Thanks for hanging in there for 2.5 hours today. And I have a list of links I'm going to post, and the thread I want to start, the 10K thread, 10K and above thread. And yeah, and then Nick, if you can post those things too that you had mentioned today, that'd be helpful. All right. Thanks, guys. Appreciate you. I'll see you in the group and the Q&A. Bye.